I'm going to show you how I made this bubbly aerated material in Blender using just particle systems. Don't worry, it's way easier than it looks. We'll be modeling a cool object, adding a particle system to it, and add some textures to make it look cool. Plus, I've got 2 advanced tips that will take your material from this to this. Alright, let's jump right in. Let's go through the setup first. The only important thing here is you have the render engine set to cycles, and rest all is your personal preference. I have used an orthographic camera here, and I have turned down the exposure a little bit, and I've set the look to medium high contrast. For the environment, I've used the Blender default sky texture, nothing fancy, but if you want, you can use your own HDRIs from Polyhaven or anywhere else. Right, let's jump in. Let's start with the default cube. Go to edit mode, select all the faces by pressing A. Make sure you're on face select mode and insert all faces by pressing I. Something like this should be fine. Keeping the selection, extrude all the individual faces outward, something like this, and insert these faces again by pressing I. Now we're going to create a hollow shape by extruding these faces again inward, maybe something like this. I'm just trying to create an interesting looking shape here, so you can skip this part as this is not going to affect the material in any way. Alright, now exit the edit mode and add a subdivision modifier. Set it between 3 to 5. I don't like the budge here. Let's fix this real quick. So I'm going to decrease this in edit mode. Something like this. Yeah, this looks fine. Now let's add some bevel on the edges to make it more prominent, like this. Yeah, this looks good. Alright, let's move on to the particle system. I have aligned my right view to camera and set the camera to orthographic view. Now select the object and go to particle systems. Press add here and change this value to volume. Now let's add our object that will act as the bubbles in this material. I'm using a UV sphere here, so just add a UV sphere. Let's make it quite small, something like this, and move it out of the way. Now select the shape, go to render, and select the object and add the UV sphere that we created here. Now you'll see spheres instancing all around the object. That's because of the subdivision modifier. So let's apply that. I'm gonna make a copy of this first as backup and move it out of the way. Delete the particle system from here. Alright. Let's apply the scale first and the subdivision modifier to this. And this should resolve the issue. Yep, looks good. Now let's add some material. Go to shading, select the object. Yeah, principal BSDF should be fine. Turn down the roughness and set the transmission to 1. Let's add a sky texture to get a better look at this material. So I'm going to select the default one here. Set the air value to 0. This should get rid of the yellow tint it's causing on the object. And let's make it transparent. Alright, it's better. Now let's tweak some settings in the particle system. So I'm going to increase the number here to adjust the density of the particles. Increase the scale randomness to 1. Jitter amount a little bit, maybe something like this. And yeah, this should be fine. Now you can play with these settings to find your sweet spot, but I'm happy with this output. So let's move on to texturing. So go to shading. I'm gonna add a gradient texture and add a mapping node to this. So Ctrl+D, set it to object, and let's add a color ramp to add some colors in this. Plug this in the base color. Now add any two colors in this black and white value of color ramp. I'm using these two colors. It should be fine. Now adjust the texture using the mapping node to your liking. I'm gonna go with this setting, something like this. Yeah, this looks good. See if we can find some interesting combinations here. Maybe something like this. All right, it's better. Also, select the instancing object, the UV sphere here, and add a plain glass material to this. Set the roughness to 0 and transmission to 1. You don't need to add the gradient here. You can add a hue saturation node here and slide it through this value to see if you can find some interesting combinations here. But I'm happy with the original one, so I'm gonna mute this node by pressing M. Now what I did here is completely optional. You can simply add a single color or leave it at completely transparent, and this is good to go. Yeah, that's about it. You've already done with the base material. Now I'm going to show you two advanced tips for this to get that extra detail and really sell your material. So tip number 1 is flip the normals on the instancing object. What I mean by this is to invert the face orientation of the instancing object. So to see the face orientation, click on this and turn on the face orientation. Now you'll see everything is in blue. That means they are all aligned correctly, but we want the UV sphere faces to be inverted. So select the UV sphere, go to edit mode, select all, and search for flip normals. Now this should make the UV sphere red, which means the faces are inverted now, and as you can see, this does make a subtle difference. So tip number 2, instancing a collection of different objects instead of just one single object. So basically we are instancing different size and shapes of objects instead of just one single UV sphere to add that randomness. So I'm just going to duplicate this UV sphere and change the size and make this tall. Let's duplicate another one and this one flat. And for the last one, I'm gonna deform this a little bit in edit mode. So select any random edge, turn on professional editing, and shape it something like this. Okay, now let's make a new collection. I'm gonna name this droplets, or you can call it whatever you want, and move all of these shapes into that collection. So press M and select the collection. And that's it. Now go to the particle system, select the object, and change the render as object to collection. Select the collection that you just created, and voila, look at that. Make sure you apply the scale and flip the normals on these instancing objects as well. Look at that. You'll see a noticeable difference on these, and this will really take your material a step further. So yeah, there you go. Your aerated bubble material is done. I hope you guys had fun with this one. It's such a satisfying material to create. And if you guys want to see how I made 9 different materials using just one node, do check out this video. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.